All right. Good to be with all of you. Good to see you. All right. So before we kind of kick things off and begin, I do have a quick activity for us. So I'd like for all of us to sort of get to know a little bit better. What I typically do in my classes that I teach here at Tulane is I'll start class by playing some music from a New Orleans artist, and or I'll source songs from some of my students in class. And I do that. So I'm someone who sort of finds connection and meaning through music. And so I find it not only a great way for students to get to know the New Orleans music scene and indoctrinate them in that space, but a way for all of us to sort of build connection with each other in class. So if you would, I would like to invite you to type in the chat by submitting a current artist that you have been listening to lately. It can be a Noah artist, or it can be anyone that you wish. I'll go ahead and start. So lately, I've been listening to a lot of the Revivalists. I can't get enough of those guys. I'll be seeing them in concert this summer out on the West Coast. So if you would, go ahead and share someone that you've been listening to. Love it. Nathaniel Ratliff and the Night Sweats. I saw those guys in concerts. They're phenomenal. Majid Jordan. All right, so I'm going to have to add that to my list. Trap Shorty. Love it. Bob Marley. Awesome. PJ Morton. Right on. That's great. De La Soul. I have not heard them, but I'm gonna have to add them to my list. Raw Alejandro. Awesome. This is excellent. So thank you for taking some time and effort to do that. So if you take anything away from this webinar, maybe now you can walk away having learned about a new musician to sort of add on your Spotify queue. And feel free to keep those kind of rolling in. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start my slides here. Oh, Jalen, you mind giving me the controls?
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. Should be all set.
All right, I think I got it. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and kick this off. Awesome. All right, so a little bit about me. I've always been someone who wears many hats. It could be because I am a true Renaissance man, or it could be because of my undiagnosed ADHD and the need for constant stimulation. Either way, here's some about my professional experiences. I'm the managing partner for G-Wave Holdings. More on that in a little bit. As I alluded, I'm an adjunct lecturer at Tulane University. I teach two courses. One is the entrepreneurial landscape of New Orleans in partnership with the LePage Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the A.B. Freeman School of Business. That was a mouthful. The other is a leadership course through the School of Liberal Arts. The practice of leadership is something very near and dear to me. I apply a lot of the frameworks in class as I look at and evaluate startup founders. More on that later. I'm also a real estate developer, and I've worked on about a half dozen small multifamily residential projects throughout the New Orleans area. So I kind of wear that hat on occasion. My day job is serving in a leadership role with my family's local transportation business. And finally, most of my professional career actually has been centered in the fundraising profession. I've spent about a decade at Tulane raising gifts for the university to the tune of about 8 figures. So literally, my job is to ask people for money, which puts me in a unique position to share with all of you some insight on how you can raise money for some of your businesses. I've also got some pictures on there that sort of tell a little bit of a story about myself. I'm a 6'10" stomper. We just wrapped up the Mardi Gras season and had an absolute blast. That's my wife and I. We are big costumers. We've got a costume closet for every occasion. And then our dog, Alvin, who is a little rascal and definitely did not want to wear those bunny ears. Okay, so a little bit, I mentioned that I'm a managing partner for G-Wave Holdings. Here's some more info about the fund. We were founded in 2017 as a direct result of an opportunity that came my way. A couple of years earlier, I was in my MBA classes at Tulane and part of a new venture planning course. Our final presentation was to come up with an investor pitch deck for a make-believe company. One of my teammates said he had an opportunity, had an idea for a fake company, so we went with it. while going through preparations, I kept thinking to myself along the way, man, this is actually a half decent idea. Fast forward a little bit, I get a phone call from my classmate who says that they decided to pursue the idea and build it into a business. He asked if I wanted to invest. At the time, I was still a pretty broke grad school student, and I said I would, but I didn't have a spare couple $100,000 sitting in my bank account. I thought all was lost until an idea came to mind to crowdfund the idea with some friends, family, and fools of my own. So we scraped together about $70,000 and became one of the company's first investments. Fast forward a little bit more, and $40 million of funding later, that company grew to become battery manufacturing startup Advano. After that experience, I came across another opportunity in AxoSim during New Orleans Entrepreneur Week. It was at that time that a light bulb had gone off. I realized through this process just how big the gap in funding was in our ecosystem. And I wanted to play a part, albeit a small one, in affecting change for startups in our area. Since that time, we've invested over $1 million, of which you can see some of our portfolio companies below. Our check sizes typically range in the $50,000 to $100,000 range with the ability to add follow-on capital. Our limited partners are my own friends, family, and fools, just about all of them part of the Tulane community. So a little bit of an agenda for what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to walk you through sort of some of my tips and tricks for relationship building and how we can sort of build meaningful relationships. And then we'll also talk about how you can go about raising money from your friends, family, and fools. And then when you're ready to kind of take that next step, you'll want to engage angel investors. So we'll talk about how to raise capital from that because their metrics are going to be a little bit different than those who are sort of in your close inner circle. I'll talk a little bit about specifically what I look for as an investor and how I evaluate founders and startups. And then we'll go through a Q&A. But first, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. So Jalen, if you wouldn't mind popping in the chat, I've got a quick 2-question Menti that if you would indulge me in answering a couple of questions. Okay, so it looks like we've got where folks are kind of on the entrepreneurial journey. We've got some that are kind of in the ideation stage, some that are in the seed round. Great. We've got someone here so they don't get fined. Thanks, Marshawn Lynch, for that one. All right, let's go to our next. Give another minute or so. Go to the next question. And the question that I had secondly was, what was one word that comes to mind when you think of raising money for your businesses? Some of the words I'm seeing: scary, grit, persistence, exhaustion. That's absolutely true. All right. Great. Opportunistic. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to kind of share a little bit about your experience when it comes to fundraising for your business. And thanks as well for sort of giving me a feel for where folks are kind of in the on their own journeys with respect to ideation, pre-seed, seed round. So we'll jump back into the presentation. Okay, so here's a quote that many of you probably have come across. However cliche it may be, it absolutely rings true. If you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. People are going to invest in opportunities and ideas in which they have a vested interest. As a founder, it is your responsibility to find ways to sort of evangelize and convince others of your vision. However, the more you can sort of involve them in the building of that vision, the more that they're sort of going to have their own agency and buy-in with it as well. Jalen, just give me a quick thumbs up. You can see these slides, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So a couple of quick relationship tips at the outset. You should get to know prospective funders before you need to raise money. This means putting yourself out there at the very beginning. Attend Idea Village or Propeller events. Go to NOE. Attend that just happened last week, and I hope that you were there. It was a phenomenal event with some great programming. Attend programming by the Innovation Institute and the LePage Center. But while you're at these events, I would encourage you to focus on being a sponge. Soak up as much information as you can and try to meet as many people as you can. Attempt to get to know these people on a personal level. You want to build relationships without any sort of hidden agenda. Because the thing about it is you really never know where that can lead to. And to the best that you can, be authentic and genuine. Otherwise, people will be able to tell when you're not. And people give money because they trust you. So what I want to go to next is talking about some ways on how you can build some of that trust. So I like to use the analogy of an onion, because what you want to be able to do is when you're asking questions and getting to know people, you're going to start off at the surface and you're going to peel back some of the layers to sort of get to that onion core, if you will. So I've got some questions here, and the way that I like to kind of break it down is you want to ask sort of the surface level, the what questions. You get a couple layers deep, and then you're going to sort of the how, and then at the core, you're trying to find out the why. So when you're meeting prospective funders or people that can help you kind of along the way, you want to get to know what their professional background like, what kind of hobbies that they're into, what do they do away from work, what boards or civic engagements are they on. I like this last question because typically these are activities that they're doing away from work and that they're taking their time, energy, and effort to spend on. So it's important to them. So it's important to get to know what those are. Then you peel back the onion a little bit and you're getting into the how. How do they get into angel investing? How have their life experiences shaped their investment strategies? How have they learned from their successes or failures? I love that question because that's something that's really sort of deep and thought provoking, and it really helps to sort of get people to open up a little bit. And then how has mentorship played a role sort of in their professional career? Again, you're just sort of getting to know folks on an even deeper level. Then you get to sort of the very core, and this is the why. Why are they an angel investor? Why are they involved on a particular board engagement or civic activity? And why is it important to them to mentor other startups? So you notice that you kind of start off with sort of some of these questions that again get to the what, and then you're getting into the why. When you find out that why, you really get to understand sort of people's motivations, what makes them tick, and what's important to them. So it's really important for you as an entrepreneur to understand that why. To the next slide. There we go. All right. So some more tips from an onion. I mentioned before, feel free to ask deep, thought-provoking questions. I would encourage you to sort of stay away from, sort of the more traditional, I would call them controversial topics. Stay away from politics, religion, things that can get you kind of in trouble. But at the same time, don't be afraid to sort of ask things that really get people to think deeply about what it is that you're asking. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and your authentic self. I say that because people typically will mirror the energy that you're putting out there. And if you are being vulnerable and authentic, they're going to bring it right back to you. Last, don't try and accomplish all of this sort of in one fell swoop. It's something that what I had done in the fundraising world. We had a saying that typically it took 4 to 8 touch points before you could ask someone for what we called a major gift. So I think it's true for fundraising for your startup as well. It's going to happen over time. Be patient. So I love this quote, not only because the man who married my wife and I would literally tell me this quote ad nauseum, and it reminds me of him, but also it's a reminder to constantly think of ways to put yourself out there. Don't get stagnant. Also, I'm not really super keen on the word networking. It feels a little bit too transactional. And what you're trying to do is build a much more, I would call it meaningful relationship than sort of this give and get type relationship that sort of I think of associated with networking. All right, so I brought up this slide to kind of give a little bit of perspective on the startup funding early stage life cycle. Your friends, family, and fools round typically corresponds to a pre-seed stage investment. Angel investing does happen at the pre-seed, but it's also prevalent in seed stages as well. Investment vehicles are also different in some cases, as well as the readiness stage of your product. So when you look at kind of on this slide, the product, typically in your pre-seed, you're still working on your minimal viable product. You're still trying to validate who your customers are, who your early users are, and you're making a lot of shifts and changes. Your seed round, you have your MVP. You're really starting to kind of grow, and you're seeing month over month growth, kind of in the, I would call it 30% range. Also, your revenue is different, right? Because of your growth in customers, that also corresponds to sort of your monthly revenue generation. And then typically, how much you're investing differs whether you're in your pre-seed or your seed. Pre-seed, you're kind of typically in the less than $1 million. Anything kind of over that, and then you're really kind of moving over into sort of a seed stage. Again, that also corresponds to company valuation. When I alluded to the investment vehicle, I'll talk about this a little bit later. If you're kind of in the pre-seed stage, typically you'll look at safe notes. That's a simple agreement for future equity or convertible note. And then angels will kind of engage in what I would call a priced round. Again, kind of more on that later, but just to kind of orient you sort of on the life cycle when you're looking at early stage investments. All right, so getting into sort of when you're raising money from that close inner circle of your friends, family, and fools. I've got some questions and prompts that I'll kind of go over into as well. And I would also encourage you to as we're going through this, if you have questions, feel free to submit them in the chat, and I can answer some of those in real time, but there will be time for Q&A at the end. But so the question here is, at what point should you seek out investment from friends and family? I would first encourage you to do an analysis of how much it's going to cost to build your minimal viable product. And then couple that with, looking at the first 3 to 6 months of operation, getting a grasp of what that looks like. Once you have that number, get a sense from your own personal finances, how much of that you can bootstrap yourself, how much that you can fund yourself. If over the course of that evaluation, you're not able to pay for the entire amount yourself, you need help with funding. What you're going to do is you're going to start with your close friends and family first. Use these people as well to help build and refine and develop your pitch. You might ask yourself, why is there a picture of Cutco knives in this? And at the encouragement of my wife, sharing a story with you. So in high school, I actually used to sell Cutco knives. It was a great experience, summer job, and kind of the ability to be able to build and develop pitches. When I first started and sort of that sales cycle, I immediately went to my friends, my inner family, and then friends. And it allowed me the opportunity, as I mentioned before, to refine your pitch. There were times when I just sort of fell flat on my face, and being able to do that in kind of a setting that's a low risk setting, because you're talking to friends and family here. That again allows you to refine your pitch, and they'll sort of be able to help you build that along the way. Then the question becomes, well, how should you approach friends and family when you get to that stage of wanting to ask for an investment? And I would just say, approach it like you would a job interview. Take it seriously. Carve out some time with your friends and family that is outside of just sort of your normal, this is the normal time that you spend with them. And first, I would ask if they would be willing to be a sounding board to your idea that you're thinking about or that you're considering. And then, when it comes to feedback, I mentioned this before, when you're kind of building that pitch and you're refining it, have patience with yourself. It's going to take you many, many, many iterations to sort of explain your idea. and what it is, your concept that you're trying to build, this idea that you're trying to pitch for them. Um, and as I mentioned before, sort of this idea of asking for advice, when you're asking for feedback about your idea, when you're asking if they would be a sounding board as you're starting to build this out, listen for markers. If they're asking you questions like, well, how much is this going to cost? Or, how big is how big could this get? You got, then at that point, you know that you've got their interest. So something that I would like to talk about when you're sort of navigating those, because these are really close personal relationships that you have with family and friends. The guidance that I would say at the outset, and this is after the stage that they've sort of asked you, well, how much is it going to cost? I'm interested in investing. I'd like to put some in. At the very outset, you need to be as upfront to them about the distinct possibility and probability that they may lose out on the entirety of their investment. This is an incredibly risky endeavor. So you need to be as upfront and transparent about that. I would also say too, and I say this when I'm raising money for my fund, especially in sort of the early days too, as I'm approaching my family, friends, and fools, never invest an amount that is more than you're willing to lose a friendship or family member over. It's just not worth it. What I would do too is I will ask people where the funding has come from, because if people tell you that they might be mortgaging part of their home or pulling cash out or pulling money out of their 401k, walk away. Don't even consider it. Don't take it, because again, this is an incredibly risky endeavor. And if that money's gone, that's their nest egg. That's what they need to be able to retirement. You don't want that on your conscience. So just again, I cannot stress enough at the very beginning, talk to your friends, family, and fools that you appreciate the support that they are giving you, but that there's a very real possibility that they're going to lose. Okay, so there are pros and cons to engaging friends and family and investors. Huge pro. These people are going to be your biggest cheerleaders, your biggest advocates. They're going to sing from the rooftops about the work that you're doing and what you're trying to build. That's fantastic. You sort of need, I mentioned people to be your disciples, to help evangelize what you're trying to do. These people are going to be the best ones for the job. They're also the people who know you the best. So when it comes to sort of your strengths and weaknesses, they're going to be able to identify them. And that's incredibly helpful to know at the outset too, skills that you bring to the table and the things that you fall short in, because as you're developing your idea, your business, and you know that you might be short in a certain area, well, then you want to look for partners that can help pick up that slack. At the same time, one of the most incredible things about having family, friends, and fools invest with you early is they also have the most to gain. If this ends up being a dynamite idea and it blows up, they're right there along kind of in that journey with you, which is a pretty special thing. On the flip side, there are cons to this. Again, as I mentioned before, if you're not sort of at the very beginning explaining sort of the risk associated with this, you can jeopardize relationships. The second, these also can be people who might be sort of the hardest to convince of what it is that you're trying to do. That's why I said it's going to take you sort of several iterations to sort of explain your idea and as you're refining that pitch. And by the very nature of them being some of your closest people in your inner circle, it can be very difficult to take the feedback they might give you, because it's very easy to take that personally and not be able to take it constructively. So that's sort of a challenge that's associated with engaging family, friends, and fools. So another quote here: "The best way to raise money is from friends and family, and then the next best thing is fools." All right. So when you sort of have got to that next layer where you've exhausted bootstrapping, you've exhausted your friends, family, and fools, then you're ready to approach angel investors or angel groups. Common characteristics of angel investors: these are typically high net worth individuals, and they are typically accredited investors. Accredited investors, that's a term from the SEC that it denotes these are people who have $1 million or worth, $1 million or more in net worth, or they have an annual salary of $200,000 if single, or $300,000 if married or a couple, and earned income. Also, accredited investors, they could be people who just hold certain series licenses, like the Series 67, Series 7, sort of in the finance world. Angels typically tend to invest in companies that are located close to them. There's quite a few angel groups here in the, I would say, the greater New Orleans area and in the Gulf Coast region. Also, angels, what's great about them is that they have the ability, because they've been there before, to provide advice more hands-on, can help kind of provide that mentorship and that guidance. And these are people that are value add. They're not just going to give you their money, but they're gonna also be able to help you on building those relationships. They can help you source talent. They can help you find customers. They can help introduce you to other investors. So it's important to find the right fit as you're talking to prospective angel investors. So the question here, what are common terms with angel investors? Angel investors come in all shapes and sizes. So it's sort of challenging to kind of put into a bucket, specifically because what one angel investor does is going to be different than another angel investors. Something I can speak to sort of my experience and something that we've had a lot of our early stage deals have been, again, especially kind of in the friends and family round, like the seed, pre-seed. Series A, you don't see this as much, but that's not to say you won't. And it's the simple agreement for future equity. This was popularized by the accelerator Y Combinator. I've got some links to safes there that I can also drop into the chat. Typically, what I like to see are a use of a discount and a cap. That's essentially you are discounting. I think the standard is 20%. So if you have a safe note that's at a 20% discount, that's essentially saying, okay, from family and friends, you are able to purchase equity into this company, but it's going to convert into equity during our next round of a priced round at a 20% discount to whatever that price round ends up being. And I also like the use of a cap because as an investor, if there's the ability for your company to be worth $50 million, and I'll set a price cap of $3 million in the family and friends round, well, then that sort of gives me a bit of an understanding. Is like, okay, so when we do convert into equity, this is what sort of that exit multiple could look like on the back end. I've also got here an example of a term sheet. That's something that you're going to be building out as well. And especially when you get into sort of priced rounds. Again, I'll drop that into the chat. And this example term sheet goes through each of the different terms. What are liquidation preferences, valuation, things of that nature. So I would encourage you to take a look at that as well. What stage should an entrepreneur seek out angel investments? That's when your minimal viable product is pretty developed or very near to completion. You've already got existing customers or potential customers who have said that they are willing to buy from you. And again, as I mentioned before, you're going to typically go to angel groups when you've already exhausted your own resources, the resources of those that are closest to you, and you kind of need to take that next step. And angel investors, again, they're with you on this journey, and they're going to want to see high growth potential, especially since they're investing with you kind of in the early rounds, and they're taking on that risk. They want to know that you have the ability to be a $10 million or more company, and that your exit potential is kind of in the next 3 to 7 years. That's not to say that angel investors won't talk to you if you have less than $10 million in revenue, but I'm just to give you sort of an idea of the scope and size that your company needs to be for them to kind of understand and want to take that risk. Benchmarks. What do angel investors typically look for? Things that, I mentioned sort of that 3 to 7 year time horizon for an exit, an exit strategy, kind of in that 5 to 7 year range. Exit being that, initial public offering, an acquisition, a merger with another company, things of that nature. Some other terms that they're going to be asking you about: monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue. They want to know kind of the health of the revenue generation that you're getting. Are these contracts that you're going to have on a month-to-month basis? Are they one-offs? Is it something that's going to be happening every year? Something like that. They also want to know how much it's going to cost you to acquire a customer. And for customers that you have, what is that lifetime value that you can have? Again, that kind of alludes to, is this just sort of a one and done? Is this a customer that you can have sort of throughout the life of your business? They're going to ask you about churn and retention rates, your gross margin, your burn rates. Burn rates, that's they'll say, okay, what's your burn? Your burn is it costs $150,000 a month. So our monthly churn is 150,000. Then they'll ask you, well, how much money do you have in the bank? Well, we've got $1 million. Okay, so then you take your $1 million divided by your 150,000 that it's going to cost you every month, and that lets you know how many months you have left of runway. So again, these are sort of questions that angel investors are going to look out for. And then they're going to ask you to sort of do, they're going to have their own return metrics. They're going to want to know for exits, what have other companies, how have they exited in this space? What's been the investment multiples that they've exited at? And they're going to want to see, your analysis, like what are some comparables? Internal rate of return, that's another metric that investors will use that sort of discounts the return over a period of time. As far as any guidance that I would ask as far as building relationships with angel investors, I would encourage you at the first. There is a really neat tool that Greater New Orleans Inc. has, and it's Startup NOLA's ecosystem mapping. This has a list of every angel angel investor that is in this area, any sort of funder. They'll also be able to map out different ecosystem tools, different accelerator programs. So it allows you to toggle or check which one that you're looking for. So I'd first go to this ecosystem mapping, check. I think the tool is, or the radio box is, you're looking for funders, and then print out a list of all the funders that are present. Reach out to as many of them that their investment thesis aligns with what it is that you're doing. Ask them out for coffee. Follow up, then follow up again. Be pleasantly persistent. I love the word be pleasantly persistent. That might be the best compliment that I think I've ever received when I was in the fundraising world. It's something that these people have their normal daily lives, and they don't have to answer to you. So it's incumbent on you to sort of keep that relationship going and in your follow-up. You're also going to hear no an incredible amount. You're going to hear no, you're going to hear not at this time. So if you have not heard the word no, let me be the first to tell you no, not at this time. I'm not going to meet you. Reach out to me and I will tell you no. So if you need to hear that a couple of times, I'll tell you as many times as you need to hear it. When you get that meeting, that's when you're going to go through that sort of those list of questions that I talked about, the what, the how, the why. Find out what makes them tick. Also, see if any of your friends, family, fools have a relationship to local angel groups, or if they can help facilitate an introduction. That's another helpful, try and find out what their connections are. How can their connections become your connections? All right. So kind of looking at, I would call it a 60,000 foot view up. And I start to get into the things that I look for. These are 5 questions that I will ask if I'm meeting with you and you kind of give me your pitch. I'm asking myself 5 questions. What's the problem? Is there a problem? Is this a one-time problem, or is this problem pervasive over time? Does the solution that you're presenting to me, is this solution going to solve this problem? Number 4, I think number 4 might be one of the more important ones. Is this the right team to solve this problem? There are so many instances, especially in the startup space, where you might have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have the right team, it doesn't matter how good your team or how good your idea is. If you don't have the right team, you're not going to be able to get it to go to market. So I'm really interested in the team and how it gels. And then number 5, I'm going to ask sort of the business metrics around it. There might be a problem, you might have a solution, but there just might not be a business around it, and that's okay. But it's important to sort of understand that. Okay, I'm going to rapid fire. I've got a laundry list of questions as I again kind of think about the things that I look for. Just know that when I'm meeting with you, I'm going to be asking myself, I may ask you some of these questions, but I may go back and ask myself some of these questions because in an effort to sort of judge both the business idea as well as the founders as well. So I apologize. This is going to be a lot, but we'll send this out to everyone afterwards so you can get to take a look at this list. But just to go through a couple of them, things that I look for: are you coachable? Can you respond back to feedback? Are you someone that can adapt or are you kind of, pretty rigid and set your ways? I think that this question is pretty close to, there's another question in here. Are you in love with is there an intimacy with the problem set? Is it personal? I like that question because in a way, if the problem that you're trying to solve is not something that you internalize or it's important to you, then you're not going to have a passion about it. And it's just going to be sort of another like day job, just another thing that you do. But I also want you to be in love with the problem set, the problem, and not your solution, because you're going to get feedback. And I want to know that if you get certain pieces of feedback to change your business, that you're open to that feedback, and that you're someone that's not a narcissist, that you don't think you're the smartest person in the room, that you're open to being able to change. I'm going to want to know what your why is and what your drive is behind it. The intimacy set with the problem is kind of linked to what your why. I'm going to want to know how you respond to adversity. I mentioned getting told no. You're going to get told no a whole hell of a lot. But during those tough times, I'm also going to want to know what kind of supports that you have to help get you through that adversity, because that's almost as important to knowing how you respond to adversity versus what do you have, how are you surrounding yourself with the ability to get through that. I had this question in here, can you get on the balcony? What I mean by that is, as a leader of an organization, and this is taken from the adaptive leadership model, something that we talk about in one of our classes, I'm going to want to know, are you someone who's very much into the weeds, or do you have the ability to pull back at that 60,000 foot view and survey the field? As a leader, you need to have the ability to both kind of, if you're looking at a chessboard, to be able to see all the pieces that are at play. And you also need to be able to kind of dive in and be one of those pawns as well. So that's what I mean by can you get to the balcony? So again, we'll send some of these questions out. This is, again, what I look for. And then when it comes to your business model, I'm going to ask you for your business model canvas. So if that's not something that you have used or worked on, I would encourage you to build that out, because I'm going to ask you about it. I'm also going to ask again, what's the magnitude of this opportunity? How big are the exits? What kind of multiple exit are we talking about? Are we talking about a 5x multiple upon exit? Are we talking about 10? Are we talking about 20? And then I'm also going to ask you what research you had. Don't just pull a number out of your what, that, oh, this could be a 20x return. I'm going to ask you why. So again, these are just kind of more questions about your business model. All right, that was a lot of information to throw at you. I'm going to take myself off screen share here, and let's just have a conversation about stop sharing. So please feel free to take a moment to sort of throw some questions in the chat here, take yourself off mute, and I'm happy to sort of answer any questions about the presentation, or if there's anything else that you have that we can kind of talk about for the next 10 minutes or so.
I've got a question.
Sure, go ahead, Jalen.
Yeah, so you talked about burn rate. Is there a range of burn rate that's more likely to go over well with a potential investor? At what point is your burn rate like, hey, you really got to start pulling out all the stops? Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of one of my questions.
That's a good question, Jalen. And again, kind of talking about your burn rate, just to reiterate, your burn rate is essentially how much money you have in the bank and how much your expenses are on a monthly basis, and you divide that, and that'll tell you how many months you have left of funding. If you're coming to me and you're telling me that you've got 1 month left of burn, if you've got weeks left to burn, that's I'm probably not going to invest, just because that's something that is this is already a risky endeavor. But if it's getting pretty tight, that's not something that I want to see. I would say, especially if you're in a round of funding, and how close your MVP is, and what your customer traction and validation is looking like, minimum 6 months. I'm gonna ask, I would love to see a year. But it sort of kind of depends on where you are and how much funds you raise. Again, when you're kind of in that pre-seed stage, or the ideation stage, that burn's not gonna be a whole heck of a lot, and that's okay. But again, when you get kind of to the angel round and they ask some of those questions, those are some of the things I'm looking at. All right, so the question about take on the business model canvas versus lean canvas as one of the different items you would request. Yeah, I'm fine with sort of either of those. We use the lean startup model in class, and so I can drop a link. It's off of Strategizer, I think is where I'll drop that link in here. But that's something that I typically like to use. I hope that answers your question, Tina. Any other questions you folks have? Great. Well, let me drop some of those things into the chat that I said I would do. I'm also gonna put my email address in there. Feel free to reach out. I'm
Yeah,
always happy to be a sounding board.
Evan, if possible, could you pull up that very last slide that talks about the upcoming events with our
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
no. Yes. So thank you all so much for joining us for our webinar series, our Money Matters series. Big shout out to Evan. I've known Evan since I was an undergrad. I think I've known Evan since before I lost all my hair, but we have the same haircut. That's my
That's
guy
right.
right there. So I'm really thankful that we were able to learn from Evan today. We got to chat a bit about relationship building, being vulnerable and authentic, having 4 to 8 touch points with a potential investor before you really do make that capital ask. Got to learn a lot more about some more in-depth questions. One of my favorite quotes I might print it out, hang it up in my office is, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. I'm definitely going to be asking for a lot of advice. I'll definitely
There
say
you
that.
go.
We learned how to be pleasantly persistent. And one of my other big nuggets that I took away was to be in love with your problem, not your solution. I think that's really good wisdom in this. So, really can't thank you enough, Evan, for taking the time to chat with us. Please keep stay tuned with us at the Innovation Institute for some of our upcoming events. April 9th, we've got another IP webinar, Copyright Unveiled with Chuck Velauskas. April 19th, the LePage Center is having their Pitch Friday, grand prize round and celebration. April 23rd, we've got another Money Matters series talking about Series A, B, and beyond. It's going to be a panel discussion. Don't miss it. And then April 24th, we're having another one of our open mic nights. So we really hope to catch y'all then. Really do appreciate you joining us today. And I will be sending these slides out to everyone that was in this call after the fact. So yeah, thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful day.
Thank you all very much. I really enjoyed being with you today, and I'm going to stick around for a few minutes so that I can stick some of these links into the chat that I said I would.
Yes, and we'll also send out the recording of this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Jalen.
Of course.
Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Harrison. All right, so some of the things I said that I would send.
And we can include it in the recording as well that we send out.